All righty. Well, welcome everyone. Good evening, good morning, or good day, wherever you all are calling in from. My name is Nina Olivier. I am the event and program coordinator for the Northwest EcoBuilding Guild, and welcome to our March education session, How to Sell and Build with Low Carbon Materials. We're very excited to have you all tonight. Just a couple housekeeping items. This event is being recorded. Recordings of this event will be made available about a week after tonight's event, so about next Wednesday. And for those of you who have registered via Eventbrite or have received emails from me, not to worry, you will receive that recording link. So if you have to go out early today or if you join late, you will still have access to the event. As I mentioned before, please mute your microphone during the presentations to avoid any background noise. There will be question and answer sessions at the end of the first presentation and at the end of the second batch of presentations. Please, if you have any clarifying questions, please post them in the chat box. We can pause if you're curious on the definition of a term or want something explained more clearly. There will be options for that as well. And if you have any specific logistical questions or challenges, I will go ahead and post my email in the chat box, which is located at the bottom of your screen. There's a little chat bubble. And you can also text or provide a phone call at my phone number that will also be in the chat. So a couple of announcements. If you like what you see tonight, you're going to love what's coming up next. On April 27th, we have our education event. We are excited to be hosting a Washington State Energy Code question and answer training. So this event's kind of neat in that we have sent out a survey to all of our members. And if you're interested in getting a question survey sent to you, let me know. And our speakers, our trained energy code professionals, will answer them during this awesome event. So it's a more discussion, question, answer based. There won't be a super detailed kind of PowerPoint presentation. It's a really fun way to kind of engage with the speakers, Q&A all around the 2018 Washington State Energy Code, as well as some information on those updates for the 2021 version of the Washington State Energy Code. So lots of fun. Our promotional partner, Built Green certification program, is hosting a How to Design Green Homes for the New User Experience Imperative on May 19th with Sam Rashkin. This is a fabulous all-day in-person intensive workshop training that we highly recommend. If you are interested in joining that, feel free to reach out to me in the chat. I'll also post all of this information in the chat as well. And then May 25th, we have our May education event, Building Optimization Through Offsite or Modular Production. Should be a really awesome education event. We already have about 2 or 3 speakers that will be involved with some great case studies. And then of course, the Northwest Green Home Tour applications are now open. So please submit those sites, submit those great projects, because we'd love to have them on the tour. There are virtual and in-person options. So if you're still a little wary on COVID, we have virtual tour options as well. Or if you miss people and want them to come and check out your awesome project, please book an in-person tour with the Northwest Green Home Tour that's occurring May 7th and May 14th. I'll post all that info in the chat. And as always, I know we drive this home a lot, but really it's the members that make up our organization and make all this possible. So please consider becoming a Northwest EcoBuilding Guild member today. Your membership provides you access to member-only content and event replays. It provides you discounted pricing on absolutely all of our events. We have a code innovations database, a membership article database, as well as you are featured on our Green Pages listing. And I send that Green Pages directory just about every other week for folks asking me, hey, Nina, you're with the Guild. Do you have a green builder you would recommend? And I just send them that list. And if you become a member, your company, organization, and name gets on that directory. And of course, tons of networking opportunities. Awesome. Which leads me to thanking our sponsors for tonight. So not only does membership allow us to make these events and programs happen, we also would like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Our first sponsor tonight is Earth Homes LLC Design, and we'd like to thank them. Earth Homes designs and constructs dwellings with people in mind and the environment at heart, challenging the status quo of building systems and home ownership accessibility at every turn. They lead the way to the industry's future with intelligent, harmonic, high-performance structures aimed to serve all kinds of people for generations. Thank you, Earth Homes, for sponsoring tonight's event. And a big thank you to our second sponsor, Pathway Design and Construction. They are a Seattle-based full-service remodeling company that specializes in highly aesthetic, eco-friendly, and custom designs. By focusing on comfort solutions to accommodate homeowners' individuality, the Pathway team is able to create beautiful and functional designs that are built to last. Paul Kocharhook, owner of Pathway, understands the repercussions of using chemical-based materials in construction and its effects on our health and the built environment. Many homeowners are unaware of all the harmful effects certain building materials can have on a home's occupants. This is why Pathway has strong values around this topic, and it's their mission to promote wellness into each remodel project. It is their standard to consciously select clean, eco-friendly materials for each project, while having protocols in place to leave each remodel healthier and more energy efficient. Pathway takes pride in serving the discerning homeowners of Seattle and the East Side to create beautiful remodels that are healthy, eco-friendly, and accessible to all, regardless of age, ability, or stage of life. The demand for Pathway's care and craftsmanship has been extraordinary for the past few years, doubling them in size. I saw them at the Seattle Home Show. They had fabulous demos and case studies. And their growth has created opportunities in expanding a collaborative team. If you are interested in joining Pathway team as well, you can ask to contact them directly. And there's their website. I'll also post their website in the chat. So thank you so much, Pathway, for sponsoring this evening. And lastly, we have Mighty Energy Solutions. Mighty Energy Solutions is a proud sponsor of this evening's important program. We have Gio on the line too, so if you have any questions, please feel free to shoot them Gio's way. Materials, fixtures, appliances, etc., used in building projects all have carbon emissions associated with them. Gathering and refining the raw materials, shipping parts and components to the various factories manufacturing the products, and getting them to the project site all involve energy consumption and other processes that emit carbon into the atmosphere. This is all called embodied carbon. Mighty Energy has always only sold products that are made in America of components that are also made here. This reduces the distance materials, components, and the final product need to be transported. It also places the processes involved under US environmental regulations. And if a project needs to be shipped back to a factory for repair or replacement, the embodied carbon involved is also reduced. Additionally, as we have become more aware of how vulnerable supply chains are, the closer anything is made to where it is used, the less likely it is to suffer. It is to suffer from supply chain issues. We encourage everyone to consider this approach whenever possible to minimize embodied carbon in the materials and products that go into your building projects. Contact them and learn more about infrared radiant heat at mightyenergy.net. I do apologize if you can hear my cat in the back. She's meowing at the moment. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, sponsors. I will definitely provide the contact information, the link to the websites I just mentioned. And without further ado, I'd like to get into tonight's speakers. So as I mentioned, our topic is how to sell and build with low carbon materials. Our first speaker tonight, I'm so excited to introduce Jay Gentry. He is a graduate of UCLA Business School, a USAF instructor pilot, has been in marketing and sales consulting for many, many years. He focuses on efficiency and high performance building products. He is currently a Passive House California, currently on the board of Passive House California, and he is an advocate for state-of-the-art science, design, and construction, particularly for affordable multifamily housing projects. Welcome, Jay. And our second speaker is Melissa Rasmussen. She's a principal at Haven Consulting. She believes that humanity can be a beneficial presence on this planet, and that everyone deserves to thrive. As the principal at Haven Consulting, she works with her close colleagues to address issues related to homelessness, sustainability, healthy sanitation, affordable housing, community enrichment, and ecological design. Welcome, Melissa. We're excited to have you. And lastly, our last speaker tonight is Erin Sauerhoff, also on our education committee for the Northwest EcoBuilding Guild and part of the South Sound chapter. We are so happy to have you tonight, Erin. Originally hailing from New York, where he had grown painstakingly aware of the many toxic effects stemming from pitfalls of the building industry. Erin took a flight to the Puget Sound in 2014 with a crusader's resolve to absorb every ounce of natural building wisdom and achieve master status. Transferring an industrious and inspirational attitude from service in the Civil Air Patrol as a cadet captain, Erin drove headlong into the world of architects and contractors, permitting and planning, and hasn't looked back. In 2019, he realized the dream of establishing the build and design firm that is Earth Homes LLC. When Erin isn't bed-decked in moss or as the mayor of Ecotopia at Cascadia Northwest Music and Arts Festival, he is plugging away around the clock to help effect radical reunion between natural and green building practices. So welcome, Erin. We're so happy to have you. And with that, I want to welcome you all, and I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen. And I'll love to give the floor to Jay. And I think I muted everyone, Jay. So I hope you don't mind. You're going to have to unmute yourself before you start presenting so we can hear you loud and clear. And the unmute button is at the bottom, should be. See here. Sorry, Jay, we're still not hearing you. The mute button is just there at the it should be at the bottom of your screen. There's a little microphone icon. If you'd like, what might be easier is if you stop sharing and then find that microphone icon and then reshare. That might be the easiest. I do apologize. If you stop share and then unmute and then reshare, that might be easiest. There's also at the top of your bar. There we go. All right, and at the bottom, it should say unmute.
Unmute. Now I'm
there
going.
There you go. Awesome.
Hey, we figured it out.
No worries.
Now let's see if we can get my screen to share. However,
there it is. Perfect.
Is it there? Oh, okay. Well, I'm not getting my my speakers deal, but that's okay. I can present from the main one. Although everybody will be looking on my left ear a little bit because of the. There we go. It did come up.
Perfect. Awesome.
All right.
Looks great.
So first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you, Nina, for the help with the presentation. And if I could get you to watch the chat, and if something comes up that should interrupt me, I won't be watching the chat. I'll be tap dancing along.
You got it.
Thank you all for attending, and thank you for the work that you do. If you're at this meeting tonight, it means that you are in some way involved in the things we need to do to fight climate change. Tonight's presentation is about making the sale by making your prospects smarter. And when I say that, I don't necessarily mean smarter about what you're selling or what you're offering or what you do. I mean smarter about what they care about. What are their needs and priorities? So we'll get in and talk about that as we go through. But and as opposed to a very cohesive, flowing story, I'm going to jump around a little bit because I'm really looking at tactics and tips. I'm going to try to wanted to get as much into my half hour as I could for you. So we'll be going at somewhere closer to 78 speed than 33 at least. And there'll be things to go on. So Nina already introduced me and all of that information was there. Today's presentation was set for about 25 minutes plus Q&A. And my understanding is that the audience, many of you represent and sell high performance products or solutions or provide those, you're builders, architects, those kind of things. And that's a great place to be because there's a growing awareness and attentiveness to high performance. So it's being a good thing, but it's often difficult to overcome the price premium because when you get something that works better, very often it costs a little more. So today's presentation is going to incorporate some underlying concepts from consultative selling that might be of help to you, several tips and tactics for communicating the benefits and or value of high performance for the built environment, and then connecting the idea of connecting the needs, priorities, and preferences of your customer to the things you're trying to achieve. And I want to be clear that the objective here is for you to understand. I'd like you to get and understand the different concepts, tactics, and tips and things. But the idea here is to put you in a position to make informed choices about whether and which of these tactics or tips might be working for you, might fit into your own. The video of the presentation will be available, as will the slides. I sent a PDF of the slides that Nina will send out. So you have that, and my phone and my contact information is on the last slide that I show. I'm semi-retired, although my wife refers to it as hardly retired. But I'm happy to help if I can on a time available basis. Anybody that's trying to do something that will work towards saving the planet. So I'm going to go quickly through things, and we can ask questions later. The persuasive communication process, which is one way of looking at and thinking of the sales process, the most important part of it is the questioning that you do to learn about what your customer cares about. You have to prepare, you have to open the conversation, and then you have the strategic questioning. You will develop and present a value proposition or propose things. You might have to handle some objections, get agreement, as opposed to, I don't teach closing because that's an aggressive thing. People should be agreeing as they go, and if they're agreeing and you're handling and moving them along right, the logical thing to do is to step out onto the landing of the stairs you've been going up. The entire process builds credibility and rapport and trust. And there are tools and templates and things that are available, although we won't be sharing any of those tonight. This would be a much longer course. So the first really important question I'd like for all of you to think about a little bit is, why do homeowners or businesses, contractors, architects, why do they choose to invest in high performance for their homes, buildings, retrofits, projects? And I would submit that in your minds, you're thinking a bunch of detailed things. And what I wanted to say tonight or present tonight is, there's a single answer that works for every person making those choices, and that is they become in some way convinced that this is a right decision for them. It's going to meet needs that they have, solve problems that they're trying to work on, or capture recognized opportunities, some things that they would like to capitalize on. Basically, they believe that it's a good idea and will provide value and is a smart choice. So your job is to communicate the truth. This is not a trick sales course about how you manipulate people into buying that didn't intend to. You need to communicate the truth and enable them, put them in a position to make informed, smart choices based on what they have discovered that they care about. So the first concept I'll talk about is a concept called the customer decision-making process. And if you'll think about it as we go through it, this is kind of the way you approach when you bought a car, or when you decided you upgraded something, put solar panels on or something like that. Is the first thing decision that you make is, I need something. I have a need. My car's old, my furnace died, whatever's happening. I have a need. Then you need information. Of course, today we go to the internet, we talk to friends and things like that. Most of us try to avoid talking to a salesperson if we can. But ultimately, you wind up, you need to talk to a salesperson if you're going to get something. And so you decide you're going to listen. So I want to point out that they expect when salespeople come in, when they're talking to you at a show or you visiting their home or whatever, they're expecting for you to tell them things. But what the trick is, or not isn't a trick, what you want to do is you want to get them to share information. When you ask them questions, and again, they'll ask you questions as well, but when you're asking them questions about why did you decide to do this, or what makes now the time, or when you say resiliency, what do you mean? When you're getting them to think about it, the light that can come on for them is that they're getting smarter as a result of your questioning process. When that happens, they decide that, you know, I would buy from this person. This person is providing value to me. And then ultimately they decide to buy something specific at a particular time. So that's the decision process that generally most people go through. And there's a way of looking at it as the barriers you have to overcome to get somebody to make the choice you want. And those barriers are no need, or if I need it, but do I trust the person that I'm talking to, or his company or her company? Do I trust them to deliver on the promises they're making? And then should I do it now, or do I want to think about it? The no hurry. So the no need, no trust, no hurry, in that order are the things you need to communicate in your sales communications. And by the way, that's true of your website as well. Anytime, any collateral or anything that you do to advertise with, instead of starting out with what you can do or the discount that you have, you want to start with the problems you solve. Is your home uncomfortable? Are there rooms in your home that you can't use all year long, that you use in the winter but not in the summer, or things like that? So no need, no trust, no hurry is where we're headed. I'll point that out also for those of you that are selling products. If you have a new product, looking here, that people want to listen. They're not necessarily interested in sharing information, but if there's a contractor that maybe that you would like to show a new insulation product or something that you want to show them to, you can think in terms of taking that product. You can, if you're trying to get an appointment with someone you want to sell, and you have something to show them, something that's new or different. People hate to miss out on things, so they'll make the appointment with you. And then when you get in the appointment, say, before I tell you about this new product that we have, I'd like to learn a little more about your business so that I can be sure that I present the product in the right way that might be meaningful to you. So what you're doing is you're getting them to share information. So if you have something new, it can get you in doors that you haven't been able to get through otherwise. And that is because people want to listen. They're not so sure they want to share information. So the questions then will help you better understand their priorities and will help them better understand their priorities. So I mentioned open, and an opener is a way to start a conversation. And instead of just going into the, once you get by the howdy doody stuff, just getting into the conversation, I recommend that you take a few moments and that you first determine what you think the objective of the meeting is. By the end of the meeting, presentation, site visit, we want to have this happen. The plan that you're going to operate with for the meeting, and in generally the expectation for the meeting, and generally that is just how long it's going to take. And then the need is the reason that they, or the homeowners, business owners, the reason that they are choosing to take the time with you. And I would encourage you to use that as you organize. You're getting ready to go you're doing a lunch and learn for an architectural firm. Think about, why are they attending this lunch and learn? What is it that they are probably wanting to learn? What do you want to have happen at the meeting? How do you plan for it to unfold? Any expectations beyond the timing that you want to go through and talk about? And then to begin the communication, walk through that. Let me make sure we're on the same page here. My understanding is that you want to replace the heat pump or the water heater that you have with a heat pump water heater, that you want to do whatever. I understand something. That's the need that you're going through. And open is how I teach it, because open is an easy word to go with, to remember. But NEPO or INPO are the ways that I like to present it. And in fact, I did it this morning, I did it for you earlier today. When I did today's presentation, I started with how long we have. I tried to set it up so that you nodded, that you're saying, yes, it is, high performance is growing, but it is a pain in the neck and difficult to get people to pay for it. And then I explained what I'm going to present on. And then I told you my objective is to put you in a position to decide whether any of these ideas that I'm going to present would work for you, and then do so. So if you wanted to look at it, there's my objective, plan, expectation, and need. So I just wanted to give a chance to demonstrate that to you as we set up. So the important thing is the need. And another technique that I will tell you, this is a tip or tactic, is to think in terms of categories of need for the person to whom you're speaking. If you're talking to a business and you have something that you can do for them, And if they will invest in actions or initiatives if they think it can increase their sales, make them larger, make them go faster, make them close more often, reduce their expenses if they can deliver something better, and get past the barriers that keep them from performing to their full value. That would be it. Improving margins, so I have the money there. But in what we're doing, because we're selling things that are right for, that have they don't necessarily save money, they might cost a little money. So I put in red the fourth reason that businesses choose to make choices or to invest is if they think it will enhance or preserve their reputation. Now, if their reputation gets better, of course, it should increase their sales. But what we're dealing with mostly in terms of things that are make homes or more resilient or better air tightness or handle water better is the reputation, is something that will probably cost a little more, but is worth it. So those are business categories of needs. If you're selling a product, I used windows here. I don't know if there's any window sales folks in here, but high performance windows are sold all over the country. I've worked with a number of window companies. People buy windows or select the windows that they want because their windows are not performing, or they want the performance of the new windows in terms of draftiness, visibility, easy to up and down or whatever they are. Appearance, there's the curb appeal and how they appear from the inside. Impact on their lifestyle. If it's a tilt-in window and you can clean it without going outside and getting on a ladder, that's great. If you don't, if the window is, let's say, vinyl windows generally, or fiberglass or different windows don't require painting or the continuous maintenance, so that could impact your lifestyle. You'd have a little more money, you'd be able to take the vacation at Disneyland because you didn't have to repaint on a such and such. Environmental responsibility is what we'd like everybody to care about. And then the financial impact. There are rebates and things like that go there. And again, you'll have access to these slides. So we don't need to, I'm going through them quickly. In terms of homeowner needs, if you actually are selling in the home, or you're working with a contractor or an architect who needs to sell a homeowner on high performance, the things that high performance bring to a homeowner are savings or energy efficiency, and this is financial in some cases. They can save on their energy bills or reduce the risk of escalating bills, increase the resale value or sellability of their home, take advantage of incentives, and we already have a lot of incentives, and there's going to be many more, particularly in affordable housing. Comfort, both physical comfort, eliminating hot, cold, drafty spots, being able to keep the home a couple of degrees warmer and not wear a parka during the wintertime when you're in your house. And the one that's emotional is if you're dealing with parents or grandparents or people that have friends and family coming to visit them, providing a comfortable, safe living environment for the people that you love brings you some peace of mind. That is something of value. If you've got a baby on the way, you're more likely to make sure that your air quality in the home is what it should be than if you don't. So the comfort and the physical and emotional comfort are there. Health and the indoor air quality, the moisture and elimination of mold and things like that, and wildfires and smoke from wildfires, those are things associated with health and safety. And then reducing your carbon footprint or just simply doing the right thing for the planet is something that people will care about. And so the next piece of this tip in terms of deciding on those categories, an analogy to that would be when you go to the grocery store. When you go to the grocery store, if you have a list before you go, you generally remember what to get and don't get things you didn't need. So putting the needs in categories helps with that way. And here, whether you're talking about performance or financial impacts or conceptual, which is avoiding risks, surprises, faster, easier, better outcome, those kind of things, people are going to care about different things at different levels. And I would encourage you to make sure you understand them all and ask questions about them all so that you can put every twig of, yes, you should choose to do this on your side of the scales as you go forward. We had this, and I said strategic questioning. We're going to jump through a few things about strategic questioning. The client conversation, topic and follow-up questions, and earn to learn questions, problem, cause, impact. And I will tell you that the person asking the questions is the person who is in control of the sales situation. So if you can be there and if you're asking the questions, you are in control of it and leading them there. The client conversation is you introduce a topic with an opening question or a topic question, then you listen to the answer and either dig in or go back to a new topic question. If you say, a lot of people are doing things, a lot of people are interested in my product because of saving the environment and climate change. And you say, is that something that interests you? And the person says, you did not see the Hummer in the driveway. I don't think climate change is real. Well, then you don't need to dig into that. You go to your next topic question, and you just keep going through this process until you have gone through the topic questions and learned what you want to know. And again, I'll point out, they learned what you want them to learn. They became smarter while you were doing it. And by the way, this isn't a trick. This is what you do when you go out to dinner with somebody or meet a friend on the street or something. You didn't have your questions in mind, but the conversation started, and you said, I'm thinking about getting a new pickup truck. How do you like yours? And they say, it's great in town and it's not bad off road. And that gives you great, but not bad. What did you mean by that? So it is how it's how we deal with people on an everyday basis. And so what I'm suggesting is that you bring your person to the sales process and be genuine and try to understand what they care about and why. I would recommend that you have topic questions. There's a motivation question, which I'll talk to, but whatever you decide the categories of need are, you should have some questions to bring that up. If it's comfort level, you can say, many of my customers do this because of the comfort. Is that something that you care about? Suspected areas of interest. If as you drove up to the home, you noticed that that there was weep lines along one side of the house or under the windows, or a corner was going bad or something like that. Things that you see or that they've told you about, or if you're calling on a business, look at their website and they'll give you clues to that we are the best at this or the best at that or the cheapest at. And then things that differentiate your solution. If you're the only one that comes in green, you want to be sure if they ask if it cares in green. Size of company, local company, American-made products, as was talked in the introduction. Those are things that people care about, and so you want to ask them about it, particularly if you have that. So and then you listen to the answer, and based on the answer, you ask follow-up question, and the client will lead you to where to what they really care about. So I said the motivation question we talk about. This is a good place to start, just like what has changed or is about to change that's motivating you to consider investing in whatever it is you're selling at this time. They'll answer with a need, want, or priority, problem or issue, or possibility, or an opportunity that I mentioned, and those are going to drive their choices, and this is how you'll be able to sell to them. So let's take an example. You ask a motivation question, what has changed, as I said, and they say, we're planning to retire, and we want a home that better fits our retirement lifestyle. What would you ask next? When you might ask about, when you talk about your retirement lifestyle, what are you talking about? How long before you're going to retire? When you say better fits your lifestyle, what are you thinking? You could ask, those are very logical questions to dig in and learn about, and have them learn more as they do it. You said another one, you ask about X solution and somebody says your friends, I have some friends that made this choice and they really love it. So what would you ask next in that case? They say, well, what is it you have in common with your friends? Why are you like them? What is it they really love about it? We have grandkids over a lot, and we want to make sure that the home is healthy for them. How old are your grandkids? What do you mean by home is healthy for them? What are you talking about when you say that I might be able to make your home more healthy? Planning on keeping the home for the family, so I want to make sure it's durable. What does durable mean to you? Or if you're talking to a contractor, and many of you will be, or some of you will be, you can say, I know, you ask the question, he says, I know that resilience is becoming more of an issue, and I want to make right choices for my clients. I want to do the right thing for them. Once again, what is, when you say right thing, what do you mean? Who are your clients? How do you define resilience? That keeps you asking the questions, and as they answer them, you'll learn more about them, and they will learn more and more about you. And I suggested, as I mentioned before, I suggest that you have all of these kinds of questions, the motivation, the categories of need that you picked, suspected areas, and things that differentiate you. I've been using earn to learn questions as I've been speaking going through, and that is you provide an insight or justification. There's a growing urgency to reduce greenhouse gases. In recent years, we've been paying more attention to air quality. X is an important factor in. During earlier interview, you picked. And then you follow that up with the question that goes with it. And instead of spending time here, I've just got one page of them to give you some examples that you can take a look back at. The increase in wildfires has raised awareness of fire danger and air quality. Are fire resistance and having access to continuous fresh and filtered air priorities for you and your family? That would answer that. Our product solutions have been installed in several homes that have earned certification as high-performing homes. What's your thinking regarding energy efficiency, comfort, health, performance factors? Many clients select our company because they wanted their homes to stay comfortable during the power outages. Is resilience a priority for you? Currently, there are multiple rebate programs to shift from natural gas to electricity for things. Are you familiar with heat pumps, and have you considered replacing your gas-operated furnace with, et cetera, et cetera? And then the final thing about questioning is, if you uncover a problem, it's the value that you provide is in solving it. So be sure to ask, what do you think is causing the problem? What they answer will tell you if you can help, and more often than not, it will present an opportunity for you to provide additional expertise. Well, I think this is causing it, and it's great if you can say, I would agree that that's it. Have you considered this? This could be doing it too. When I drove up, I noticed these things on your outside of your house. Do you have funny odors when it rains? You also then ask, how's it impacting you? Because they'll tell you that it's a real problem, in which case they will be motivated to fix it, or it's not a big deal. So you want to say, if you find a problem, ask what's causing it. That raises keeps the conversation going, and then ask how it's impacting them, because that will tell you how important it is. Was there a question or something? Okay, let's jump to value proposition and presenting. I'm just going to teach you one thing, or share with you one thing here. Most of you know what feature, function, and benefit are because you work with building products and things. So a feature is a characteristic of the product. How the feature works is the function. The benefit is what the customer gets from that feature working, and the need is more fundamental. So we learned back in the 40s and 50s from Xerox and IBM to do something other than this. Well, if you just were to say, hey, this is the cup I'm selling, it comes with a handle, how cool is that? Yes, it has a handle, but people are wondering why it has a handle, and you don't know that. So IBM and Xerox and Procter & Gamble came up with the feature, function, benefit. So my cup comes with this handle, which enables me to drink water or to drink hot coffee without touching the cup. It enables me to drink without touching the cup, so I can drink hot coffee. How cool is that? And I'm going to suggest that we flip it on its head and say, you've told me you like to drink hot coffee, your coffee hot. I assume you don't want to burn yourself. That's why my coffee cup has this handle. How smart is that? So it's better to go feature, function, benefit, but I say that it's way better to start with the need. Because if you start with the need, something that you've learned about your customer, and I understand that you're worried that you've got the baby on the way or whatever it is that it was, they nod. That's right. That's about me. You told me that. So they're with you. You finish with something that you can show, like you're pointing to the handle on the cup. My cup comes with this handle. So they're less likely to doubt it, to wonder about it and wonder if it works. But the real important reason is to start with the need. You get another nod there, by the way. But the real important is it keeps you from talking about things that don't matter. If you can't connect it to a need, it doesn't matter to anybody. So if it's not tied to a need, it's a waste of time. So I suggest you work to figure out what your customers need, and then how the benefits and features of your product fit in to meet those needs, solve those problems. I suggest that you always begin with the need or a category of need. Like, I know that comfort's important to you, something like that, a category. I don't really care what order you do the others in, although I kind of like to end with the feature. So that's the quick look through at some sales process things. And now I just have a few tips and tactics that I have used and I teach in terms of selling the value of high performance. The first thing I've been saying over and over again, I hadn't said it, but I've said it, is it's about the people. It's not about the project or your product. If you're talking about what your product does, and you can't connect that conversation to things they care about, you're losing ground. So that the people is excellent. Another thing is it's people. They desire to get something less, or fear missing out. The same thing I said in terms of how you get in and get that appointment that you wanted. And need, trust, hurry is in that order is what you want to go through. So we're going to talk to some useful phrases that I have discovered, and you can choose to use them or not. But I like to say that quality is more than the absence of defects. It's the presence of value. Code is an absence of defect thing. Code is a pass fail. It's a D. It's a D actually. We're talking about a high performance fund that does several things in addition. It doesn't have any defects, but it also has things of value. Another one is that performance is an element of quality. People who, let's say homeowners, they love the Wolf range and the Sub-Zero refrigerator and the granite countertops. They're very, very aware of quality and the things that they can see and touch. They don't know much about the quality of things that is behind, but performance, how well something performs, is a function of quality. Skate to the puck where it's going to be. We know that whatever the percentage of people are buying high performance products today, it's going to be higher next week and higher yet a year from now. That's, there's codes are coming. We will be driving these things into code as we have been for past years. And you can future-proof your home to the code cycles, step codes, or increases in cost. If you sell something like an HRV, the difference between 80% and 90% efficient seems like a pretty small difference. It's only 10% between 80 and 90%. That's not much at all. But when you look at it from the performance side, you just went from having to reheat and recirculate 10% of your air to having to do 20% of it. So it doubled the impact. So when you're thinking in terms of efficiency, look at the backside, if you will. Next thing, efficiency is the first renewable, and I'm not going to read all of this. You'll have it so you can read it at your say layer. But basically, if you take, let's say you've got your annual usage of energy is on the left-hand side, and you add renewables to reduce it by half. That energy that the 50% energy that you're no longer losing costs you nothing year after year. The least expensive energy is the energy that you don't use. So you can put renewables to do it, but you can also do it by employing efficiency measures, doing air sealing, adding insulation, using LEDs, all of those things, and you reduce that. The same, when you compare the relative outcomes, results are essentially the same. You could get, and you can achieve what you might achieve with enough renewables to cover half of your energy by doing things that make your home more energy efficient and cause it to lose less energy, which then makes it so that you can actually put solar on and get to net zero, like on the house on the left instead of the house on the right. Another thing that I've told is helpful is put the investment in context. You're selling wood fiber insulation and it's more expensive than foam. And so people say, God, it's 20% more expensive. That's really expensive. So I would suggest that you choose to break down the investment categories in the build and retrofit. And I haven't defined the categories here, but I'll say that the insulation is, it's not a big portion of the cost of the whole cost of the home. So you can explain that the product category, whatever category you choose, is only 5% of the product cost. So even though it's 20% more to get the wood fiber, it really only represents a 1% increase in the cost of the overall home. And for that 1%, are you willing to give up efficiency or health or the comfort or resilience or something for such a tiny investment? So that's a way to, that's another thing, a way to do something. People talk payback. What's the payback on those solar panels, or what's the payback on such and such? Payback is difficult because they want a short payback, and you get out to a 10-year payback. Sounds like a long time, but in reality, that's a return on investment of 10%. Your CDs today, if you've got money in the bank, are making maybe 1.5%. So even a 20-year payback is a 5% return on investment. So it is very, getting them to think in terms of ROI instead of payback is helpful. This one is my favorite one here, by the way, is we tend to sell high performance as an upgrade. You've got a code compliant home, the same home, high performance might cost a few percentage points more. So what you have to do is they'll have to pay a premium, and you have to figure out how to. I missed a slide there. I jumped back too fast. You have to describe the science of why they should do more. You're trying to convince them to spend more for something. So instead of doing that, I suggest that you treat high performance as the baseline. the state of the science performance. And so you can choose to reduce costs. We're recommending that you do this passive house or this high performance house in this way. And you can choose to get, to save some money on it by giving up some things. We just have to decide what it is you want to give up. You want to give up efficiency, air quality, comfort, resilience, durability, value, peace of mind. People love to win, but they hate to lose. So giving something up, positioning it as this is what we offer, we can save you some money on it, but you're going to give something up for it is much more powerful than this is what code requires us to build, but we could do something better like this. The next one is what a difference 50 years makes. This, you can find this on YouTube. It's a video, and it's a 2009 Chevy Malibu in a head-on collision with a 1959 Chevrolet Bel Air. They did with test dummies, of course, but the car built in 59 has a longer wheelbase and is significantly heavier. The car here has airbags and safety belts and things like that. And if you can look at it, the driver in the car built in the 2009 code, the driver walks or maybe limps away, where in the other one, you need buckets to get the driver away. The same thing goes for a Toyota, if you will. If the baseline model that complied with 59 safety regulations, you'd have to spend extra to get safety belts, airbags, anti-lock brakes, energy absorbing frame, air sealing. Would you invest to get them? Probably so, but you don't have to think that way because they are required to. The safety regulations have those there. This is the baseline. And if you want to add extra things for convenience, an XM radio or video cameras, you can add things to it, but that's the baseline. So I come here to my to the last slide. The only light in this picture is the light that is lit, the one in the center, but you see that all of the other lights are picking it up. So be the difference yourselves. And there is my contact information and everything. Thank you much for your time. I'll stay around for questions. You see, we'll, whatever happens, happens. So thank you very much, Nina. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Jay. That was fantastic. I'm not seeing any specific questions in the chat, but I welcome folks. We have about 5 minutes. Oh, looks like some just, oh, never mind. Oh, and Tommy, that just posted in the chat, I'll definitely send you Jay's contact information as well as a PDF of his slides. So don't worry, I'll definitely do that for you. But yeah, if anyone would like, please feel free to turn on your camera, turn off your turn on your microphone, excuse me, and feel free to ask questions to Jay. We've got about 5 minutes before we start with our other speakers. Thanks again, Jay. That was fantastic.
Thank you. It's lucky you weren't. If I was in person, the people in the front row would have gotten to spray as well, because I'm very passionate about this.
Jay, I'll talk to you if you're willing to talk.
All right.
Great, if that's okay. Yeah, we have a low carbon hemp-based insulation product. We're bringing manufacturing to Jerome, Idaho, South Central Idaho. I spend every day telling people about this product, talking to customers, raising awareness, and convincing them to make the choice. I think we do focus on things like code compliance and hearing you talk about quality instead and what it gives to the homeowner. Sometimes we really rely on our environmental impact, but that's not a motivating force for everyone. So I was just writing things like comfort, air quality, safety, performance, as things that I feel like we just did a website redesign, but a lot of what you were saying was resonating. So thank you.
Well, good. I'm glad. I would really encourage you to use the questioning process and the things that are there. If every time you walked into somebody you were trying to sell something to, you had a sheet of paper that told you what they cared about, how long they'd lived there, that the reason they're talking to you, that sort of stuff, that would be really helpful to you. And you can get that just by asking questions. And as you ask those questions and learn more yourself, they learn. That's where the light comes on. Wow, I would buy from this person. And I've got a case study or two I could share of how that kind of thing works. But it really does work. I really believe it.
I really like the idea of starting with high performance as the baseline And then if you need to sort of save some money, you can cut features and lose quality, rather than starting with code minimum and trying to upsell and add cost. People don't want to add cost. I think that was a brilliant reversal. Thank you.
Thank you.
I agree with George. That's great. Thank you, Jay. Any other questions for Jay?
Well, I was just going to add to Jay that the comparison with things that people just automatically buy, like a car, I don't think they'd consider buying a car without, you know, good air conditioning or safety features or things like that. So comparing it to something that people don't even blink at spending a lot of money on frequently, I think is kind of a big deal, and not apologizing. It kind of comes across as like, well, I would like you to get this, but if it comes off as this is the base, like you said, the baseline, that's a whole different take.
Thanks, Shyam.
Yeah, I sold cars at a big dealership in New Jersey for about 2 months. And one of the things they told us was to put the person in the Escort, you know, the Ford Escort, which at the time was the base, you know, it didn't have anything. And they're like, well, doesn't this have this and that? And then, you know, you go, oh, you want more than this? Of course you do. You know? And the most reliable car actually was the Escort. It's the most fuel efficient, most reliable, and less to repair. Anyway, but yeah, I think that it is different in that way. I think that the baseline with what we're trying to sell of quality, you know,
and it's going to be the baseline in the future.
Right.
That's why the reason that automobiles are that way is because the book Unsafe at Any Speed and the insurance industry, which has a lot of money and clout, figured out that they would make more money if they made cars safer. So even though the car manufacturers fought at every step of the way that it was going to put them out of business, they had to do it because it's better to do. It's the safety.
Right.
That's why the 50 years of difference, because we haven't changed anything in 50 years. We still put up cripples and headers over windows that are not load bearing, and we just do it the way we've always done it. Or in construction and building.
We have time for one more question or one more comment.
I just wanted to say, Jay, thank you so much for joining. It's an honor to have you present, and a lot of what I've learned about sales over the year and how to communicate these things has come from Jay. So we've had a long-term collaboration. I just thank you so much for joining. It's speaking from a member of the board perspective. Thank you for being part of the event.
Thanks for the invitation. Really happy to do it.
Thanks, Lucas. Awesome. Thank you again so much, Jay. And Jay, please feel free to keep online. And folks, if you have any other questions for Jay, we'll have another question and answer session after Melissa and Aaron's presentation. Thank you again so much for your time today, Jay. It was so great meeting you and fantastic presentation. So with that, I'll give the floor over to Melissa. So Melissa, please feel free to start sharing your screen. Let me know if you have any troubles or need any assistance with that. I think I've made you a co-host.
You certainly have. Thank you so much. I'm able to come off mute all by my own little self. Hey, everybody. It's really great to be with you tonight. Thank you to the EcoBuilding Guild for the opportunity invitation. Thank you, Aaron, in particular. I wouldn't be here without you on so many levels. For those who don't know, Aaron and I have been working together off and on for about 5 years. We went to college together, and it's always an honor to show up any place associated with that human being. You'll hear more about him later on. So I'd like to give a little context, say, okay, this was an amazing presentation. We just heard about sales, and we're going to hear a lot more soon about the actual materials themselves, the how of building as well as the selling. And I'd like to take a moment and zoom out and look at low carbon materials in the context of systems. We have to have human connection. Buildings are for people. We have to have food and infrastructure and the building systems that sustain and integrate the houses that we live in. And of course, at the larger scale, we need to be in good relationship with the system of Earth, right? And in the production process, you need to have designers, drafters, architects, planners. Everybody has to be able to coordinate. You need your suppliers, you need your materials. Aaron will say more about this later on. For me, my background is not as an expert builder. I'm not even an expert designer. But my goal for the last 10 years of my life or more has been to develop an understanding of systems and what it takes to have human, ecological, and economic systems that all work together for the benefit of people, planet, and yes, profit. Right now, I work with a housing land trust providing permanently affordable home ownership. I'm also involved in a real estate bid for doing sustainable design and affordable housing. When I was younger, I worked in Ghana doing permanent aquaponics and infrastructure. And I used to work with the Center for Sustainable Infrastructure, great folks down here in Olympia. I'm trained in permaculture and biophilic design. So when it comes to creating homes that are going to work for everyone, I'm going to go ahead and hop on my screen now. We need to talk about problems that everyone is dealing with. Those range from cost and supply chain to labor and dealing with weather. The faster you can get something built, the better. And then once something is built, how do you deal with mold? How do you deal with fire? And how do you deal with the inevitable breakdowns? So just a little bit of personal context. When I was 12 years old, we moved from San Diego to Washington State. I would bet that I'm not the only person here who considers themselves a fire refugee from California. One of the things that we as the Northwest EcoBuilding Guild are going to have to be dealing with over the next 2, 5, 10 years is an enormous influx of people who are coming away from places where their homes can burn down. One of the ways to deal with that is, of course, to increase housing supply in our areas. Another way, of course, is to build houses that won't burn. As we evaluate design imperatives and as we speak to people's needs, one of the things that we can speak to is that at this point, fairly universal on the West Coast, sense of pain and sense of fear around fire. We can also speak to health. What is it like to live in a naturally built community, naturally built building environment? We don't get as sick. I'm living with someone right now who has fibromyalgia and she has other pains in her body that mean that she can hardly get out of bed most days. That shouldn't be something that we're dealing with. There are many components of that, but having toxic materials in our environment is one. We also need to be solving for ongoing costs. And it turns out that if you solve for low carbon emissions and you solve for natural materials, you gain occupant wellness and you gain ongoing costs, gain a reduction in ongoing costs. So I'm going to take just a couple of minutes and show some of the things that I think are really interesting that may not have crossed your plate before. And then I'm going to introduce Aaron and pass it off to him. And he's going to take a deeper dive into the materials themselves. Okay. So up and coming as a potential competitor and materials ally, perhaps for some of you folks, is GeoShip. Perhaps you've heard of them, perhaps you haven't. They are building geodesic domes out of a bioceramic composite that can last for 500 years, is mold resistant, fire resistant, earthquake and hurricane resistant, and is carbon zero. That is unusual. They are aiming for that to be revolutionary and a real change in how things are done. You can see here some documentation of them putting up the frame. Aaron and I were on stage together with the founder of this, Morgan Biershank, about 4 years ago at another event, not hosted by the EcoBuilding Guild, but a similar type of association. These folks are up and coming, and they're looking for people who are able to work with them to bring their dreams to fruition. It's been a few years that they've been under development, but as you can see, when it comes to life cycle carbon emissions, what they're doing with their bioceramic domes and this novel material and shape is massively lower than anything else that we have going on, even in the passive house realm. So there's improvement, and then there's radical improvement, and just offering some new ideas. This is the Center for Sustainable Infrastructure. They used to be hosted at Evergreen. As I said, I worked with them for a little while on building a decision matrix for how infrastructure decision makers could decide to do more green, friendly, ecological infrastructure rather than the conventional, what we call gray, high carbon, high intensity. As we think about building, we have to think about the context in which we built, right? What the infrastructure is sets the baseline carbon consumption for the entire population for generations. If we're going to advocate for anything, advocating around green infrastructure, especially as we have a lot of infrastructure that's decaying and breaking down, the bridges are starting to fall and dams are starting to crack. We have to do something better. We have to do something. If we replace it with the same as we've always had, we won't improve the world that we live in or the future that our children will inherit. So I do recommend anybody who's interested, they have a fascinating set of offerings here. One of the things that they make sure to do is do bipartisanship advocacy work. So they took, I think it was 10 legislators from each side of the aisle to Denmark and did a deep dive into the sustainable infrastructure programs that are there. That includes a program called Industrial Symbiosis, looking at how, as one industrial process is undertaken, the waste stream can become the input for something else. It seems simple, but designing for ecosystems on all scales is always beneficial. So, let's see, value plan will be watched. I'm sorry. Moving right along, I understand that this group has an interest in biophilic design. Biophilia and natural materials have a natural affinity for each other, making spaces that humans occupy feel like nature in significant ways, including textures that look like nature, airflow variability, temperature variability, the ability to see the outdoors directly and track track the sunlight, track the weather patterns. That has measurable impacts in terms of reducing patient healing times in hospitals, reducing incidences of violence in psychiatric wards, increasing productivity, and reducing sick days in office type of occupancy situations. When it comes to selling biophilic design that has so many benefits for human well-being and goes so well with building with natural materials, there's a lot there on the economic side to make that case. I'll just leave you with this. This is Terrapin Bright Green, Bill Browning. That's one excellent source. You can also find others. And then speaking about systems, I'm sure all of you probably are familiar with the International Living Futures Institute and how fortunate we are to live in the same region as this world-leading group. Building to Living Building Challenge and Living Community Challenge standards lets us create buildings that offer more to the ecosystem than they take. It is better than net zero. It actually contributes to making a well world by the presence of the building itself. And that's what I like to say. As Nina introduced me, I believe that humanity can be a beneficial presence on this planet. We're not all parasites, and I understand that everyone here probably believes the same, right? If you're truly dedicated to making a better world, making a well world, it has to be out of a sense of faith and hope that our children have a purpose here and that we as a species can contribute to something better for all of us. So they have a really excellent whole set of courses that I do highly recommend anybody who's interested. And you can also, at least in the city of Shoreline, get significant code considerations, incentives for building to these standards. I'm going to leave you with one more thought, and that is this excellent company called Briotech HOCl. This is going to seem like a bit of a digression, but bear with me for just a moment. All of our white blood cells, everyone on this call, our white blood cells are producing hypochlorous acid every day, every minute, using that molecule to kill viruses and bacteria, pathogens, other invaders in our bloodstream. This is a highly reactive chemical. It's very simple. It's electrolyzed salt water. It's related to bleach, but it is not bleach. And it can be used to sanitize anything. And I say that with care and with accuracy because my father is the chief medical officer of this company. So it is possible, especially in the age of COVID. In fact, I've got a mister right beside me. It's not set up right now, but it could be doing a soft fog of Brio over me as I sit here with you. And if I were in a gathering where I didn't trust everybody's health, that's what I would be doing. It's a surface sanitizer. It increases healing on wounds, and it reduces infection, all three. So that is something that I hope and have hoped for 8 years will be able to be included in the infrastructure design of new homes eventually, because this is something you could run as a fog in the corner. And yes, it is safe to inhale. And yes, there's stuff about that on the studies and published documentation side. And just sanitize everything, make it safe for the people inside. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Aaron. And Aaron and I may be in conversation or he may just launch. Aaron Sauerhoff is one of the best humans I've ever met. And what he does with Earth Homes LLC and with the Briar Homestead in particular, which I hope I'll show you some photos of, is absolutely outstanding. And I hope we'll take it away.
Thank you, Melissa, and thank you, Jay, for opening up with such an important aspect of this work that we're doing. How to invite clients into the conversation in a healthy way, and come to an agreement, not necessarily a sale. I really appreciated that. I want to echo something Melissa just said. We're not just a parasite on this planet. We can actually be a healing force for change, right? I'm in the mindset of what are the problems of our society? Okay, what are the solutions? Okay, we have the solutions. We just need to choose to do it better. About 7 years ago, I was hit hard in New York City one day with big realizations that we as a human species become products of our built environment. A quote became familiar with me at that point, and has stuck with me and been the guiding force for the next 7 years. It was from Winston Churchill, speaking to the British Parliament after the bombings, and they were discussing on how to rebuild. And some were saying expand, give everyone their own office, like make it lots of spaciousness and this and that. And he was advocating for design, like what are we actually designing for? Let's create a sense of urgency, a buzz. And he was an early speaker of something that I've heard a lot in this group. And he said a very famous quote. He said, "We first shape our buildings, and thereafter our buildings shape us." So that's been the guiding force for the next 7 or 8 years of deep exploration and discovery of high-tech green building, natural building, how much carbon our built environment actually emits before anyone even moves in, and what are the ways to not only reduce our carbon footprint, but actually flip that on its head. How can the process of building be a sequestering force for carbon? How can we draw carbon and into our buildings? How can we grow our building materials and store them in the wall cavities that we're building? So let me pull up. Just want to, as those questions ring, I'm going to transition to a little slide deck with some pictures.
Sounds great. Thanks, Aaron. If you have trouble sharing your screen.
I'm getting there. So again, pardon for a little bit of a rough presentation. I am recovering from a long weekend of dealing with a mild house fire here. And it seems really relevant. It happened on the night that we went into Aries season. So if anyone's familiar with Aries fire, more on that later if you're interested. So that's a really important point, and that hit really hard the last few days gearing up for this presentation. And it brought up a lot of emotions. I want to get real and just connect a little bit on this. When I was in first grade, my childhood house burned down, and the last few years I've really started to connect with that experience in relation to the work that I've taken on in this lifetime. I didn't really realize how much that event has shaped and guided this life path. So I just want to speak to that and acknowledge how raw and emotional and yeah, just raw I'm feeling these last few days of rushing into a room and putting out a pretty intense fire by myself before it spread. So that was a heavy thing. So my throat, if you hear it, my throat's still kind of recovering from that. I know that's quite heavy, but here we are. That's where I'm at. So I am curious. I want to engage the audience a little bit. If we can show hands and use the raise hand function real quick, who showed up to the last building event, talking about, or the last Northwest EcoBuilding education event, talking about tools for carbon, for calculating carbon impact? Show of hands, if you may. because I'm going to be touching on that. That was a really important segue for this entire, actually, like for all of these presenters. But actually, hold on one second. I'm realizing how dark it is now that the sun's going down. Let me turn on the light. Cool. Now you can see me. Thank you. Okay, cool. I was expecting some more, but that's okay. So I'll know to touch on that a little bit more here. And Melissa has, Jay has, this is good. So I'm going to go straight into some of the details, and I'm going to try my best not to dive too deep into details, but spent the last few years really experimenting and discovering how to build high performance, healthy, affordable housing while sequestering as much carbon as possible, and reducing the amount of toxins, ideally to zero. And I'll show a little case study for a house that we just had our blower door test today, and came in at a whopping 3.7, which I'm really excited about. A few years ago, actually about this time last year, you might have heard of the company as the purveyors of the micro housing project. And about a year ago, we took on a really risky project with a very small budget to build 60 micro shelters to transform the mitigation site downtown in downtown Olympia. And at the time, it was about 80 something tents. And we set up a temporary facility at the Port of Olympia and created an employment program for folks living on the streets, and took on about 250 volunteers that came through the door in the middle of the pandemic, and created a brain-proof system to create our own sit panels, put them together in a high efficiency, airtight, non-toxic way, zero VOC paints. We really pushed the envelope on all that, and then put a metal roof on it, which was a big statement. And we transformed that site into this. We gave people a opportunity to lock a door and get a good night rest, which then enables them to get connected to vital case management and high FaceTime services required to get, out of whatever situation they've found themselves, whether they come back from war and the VA dropped them on their ass, or they're coming out of the incarceration system and unable to get an apartment because they have a felony on their record, and a ton of other situations that are really hard to get out of once you're in it. So sleep is important, health is important, the process of designing is important. We didn't come in there as a big macho developer saying, this is what you're going to live in, here's what we thought of. We said, what are we actually designing for? We came in there and really sat down. We took people out to lunch, tea, went for walks with them, and really asked, what are the problems in which we're here to solve? And Jay talked a lot about that. Start with the problem and go from there. Start with why you're doing it in the first place, and then talk about how and the what. So just as a little plug, this is our initial mock-up of where we're going in the next generation of micro shelters. We're talking hyper, low carbon sequestering materials, high performance, high efficiency, et cetera, very low cost. But more on that later. So here are some really important goals. Actually, sorry, that's the next slide. This is a brief overview of what I'm going to be talking about. Natural ICFs, and ICF stands for insulated concrete forms, and it's a way to, ICFs are great. There are ways to reduce the amount of EPS foam. If a client wants to go wants to use ICF, great. There are natural ways to do it that use 17% of the concrete as standard monolithic concrete walls, and that's what we used for the Briar build that you're about to see in a minute. SIPs, fantastic. There are natural ways to do it. There's a company up in Canada that we work with when we order SIPs. We call it SNIPs, structural natural insulated panels. These are recycled shredded glass. There's huge mountains of glass bottles that are just unable to be recycled. There are companies that shred it up and that they use it for insulation. They use a structural wood fiber board as the shear, as the insulation wrap, airtight, pre-assembled, very large wall system panels. You'll see some pictures of that soon. Talk about high biomass plant fiber bale/panel wall systems. I know that's a mouthful, but we'll get there. We'll talk about natural plasters, the power of that, and what we've done over the last few years internally as a company here to really push the edge for how natural plasters can achieve, I'm really excited to say that we've achieved a one coat, all natural clay plaster that can stick to raw drywall. So that we're talking replacing traditional texture and paint, fraction of the time to install, fraction of the cost of materials, and a beautiful, beautiful high performance breathable wall system. You'll see some cool pictures of that. I'm briefly talk about natural ways to heat and cool the house. Also, very, very simple technologies and practices that we as a human species have been doing and practicing for tens of thousands of years and have forgotten. For years, I was a frustrated evergreen student, showing up to meetings, and all I kept hearing was how to reduce our carbon footprint. And at the same time, every once in a while, I would hear, inspiring talks about how to sequester carbon, how to actually flip those graphs on their head. We can grow plant matter, turn it into our built environment, and all of a sudden, I talked about this last meeting also. Instead of costing a bunch of carbon to get a house built, we can actually say that this house has sequestered X number of tons of carbon. And now we have the tools and calculators coming out to show the data. Again, a huge selling point. So some of our core value, fundamental goals when we design and build housing. How can we sequester carbon? We need to be able to manage moisture well, not just seal it out, but actually create a fully breathable, vapor permeable wall system. In the Pacific Northwest, that's critical. I don't know, I'm just gonna throw a plug. Brent Foster, amazing elder in the high performance building world. He founded and runs Northwest Infrared LLC, and he does blower door tests and building science consultations all around the Pacific Northwest. And he advocates till the cows come home about the importance of breathable wall systems. He's kind of crass and awesome. He said, "That house it's going to sweat like a pig. Trap the moisture. You let the air leak in behind the wall cavity, and then you get condensation, and all of a sudden that's where your black mold is, behind your drywall. You'll never see it until you tear apart a house," which I've done a lot of renovations and demo, and I've seen a lot of this in person. It's bad. And a lot of our health concerns, in my opinion, can be attributed to a toxic built environment. That's a statement and a half, but I think it's true. On that note, how can we eliminate, not just eliminate, but neutralize VOCs? And that gets into clay. That's my big plug for indoor materials, clay. You'll see some pictures in a bit. Clean air, clean water. If we don't have that, and also clean soil, but if we don't have that as a human species, we're never gonna have a healthy society. And we know that now. We just have to acknowledge it out loud and put that and incorporate that into our principles when we design and build. We can do that. How to create, and then the emotional things, durable, quiet, safe, and healing spaces. This goes into biophilia, et cetera, et cetera. So there are two pictures just took the other day. It's a natural ICF we use called Fazwall, company out of Corvallis, Philomath, sorry, right next to Corvallis. Philomath, Oregon, makes these natural ICF blocks using recycled wood pallets, demineralized, mixed with a little bit of Portland cement, and then molded into a block. They use an insulation insert, and then that creates a grid of rebar and concrete as it goes together. You can carve these blocks. It's quick and easy to put up. You carve them, you turn it into a beautiful rounded wall, window and door casing. This is where natural plasters and blocks and panels come together to create a durable, high-performance, airtight wall system that's breathable and beautiful and healthy. Here's a short little raw drone footage of the early part of this process. This is the intro shot of, this is over this late summer briar build, as we call it. So it's an ICF house that we built into a hillside. So the whole back of that house is a retaining wall that got buried. What you see in the background there, them building a root cellar that got buried into the hill. So this is the kind of the cross section of the blocks you can see right there. So you know, a little bit of form work at some, you know, the spots where that could blow out. So yeah, the system, you know, the methodology is very similar to any ICF block, but it's far more healthy and natural and plasterable, which is really nice and easy to work with. What I really appreciate about blocks and wall systems like this are how easy it is to crane on either SIPs or SNPs. The attachments are easy, simple. It's a fully insulated, relatively low carbon wall, roof system that is quiet and incredibly airtight. Where it connects, and we just did a whole thermal infrared scan of the building today and confirmed that where all the walls and roofs go together, there's no thermal bridging. We couldn't see the seams of the walls and the roofs in the infrared scan. So I'm really, really excited to say that it worked. We created a really high airtight building envelope with almost no thermal bridging. Again, this is another quick little drone shot of how SIPs can easily be installed on blocks or other walls. So, you know, I'm a huge fan of affordability, and when we can reduce the installation time and make the installation process more accessible, that is an important component to this model. So, again, beautiful view. Love this site. Plasters. I want to talk for a moment about clay plaster and the importance of it. I won't go too deep into the details, but there's a relationship between clay and water that as clay is exchanging water actively with exchanging the water molecules with the air, it's releasing it about 50 times smaller of a water molecule. And that ionizes that water molecule pretty substantially. And that electrostatically attracts itself to anything floating in the air, dust, bacteria, viruses, anything floating becomes then heavier and falls out of the air. So every time we walk onto this job site and walk into this house, one of the first things that people notice and they comment is, well, after they comment how beautiful it is, they say, the air is really clean. Feels really clean in here. It's true. Clay cleans the air. Selling point. I'm proud to say that this house has no paint. It is a paint-free house, and it's beautiful. There are psychological studies that I've read a while back about they measured brain scans about, put someone in a painted textured box compared to then when there's evidence that human hands were used to sculpt the space that they're in, there was significant reductions in anxiety, blood pressure, et cetera, et cetera. And if anyone's relatively a health expert, they'll know that those are fundamental parts of human, like root causes of health conditions. Clay, it's beautiful. I love these pictures. They're inspirational. We just took them a few days ago, and I just want to allow us to gaze. Plasters can be used for showers, lime, decoupage. There's natural plasters that can be used for countertops, floors, showers, etc. And they're low-cost options, very, very simple and easy to do relatively. It doesn't take skilled labor to do a lot of this work. It takes a skilled person to mentor and come through as like the finisher and the polisher, but you can really train and bring on new apprentices into this process really, really smoothly. This countertop, for example, is 1-inch utility grade plywood directly on the counter, and then 3 coats of this plaster directly on it. And it holds up. So I want to go a little bit deeper into the sequestering part. And this really involves the agricultural industry. This is going to have to involve a deep fundamental partnership with the agricultural industry. What if we grew all of our building materials on a 5 to 6 month grow cycle, harvested it, processed it? Bales are great, and straw is not the only option. Let our imagination take that where it may. But we can use, I'm going to use the words very carefully, high biomass plant fibers to produce hard lumber, replace lumber, sheet materials such as plywood, OSB, and particle board, and skins. And that science is really fascinating. The lignin, when we talk about the lignin content in some of these plant fibers and incorporating the oils from the seeds, and we find those ratios, the potential is really, really cool. And we're working on that now. If you're curious about the work we're doing with plant fibers in our factory, in our lab, please let me know. Really happy to talk more about that. I'm really excited about the work that CASBA, California Straw Bales Association, and many other organizations have been doing over the decades to bring building systems like straw bale and soon to be cob into the International Building Code. We now have Appendix S in the Building Code. This is straight out of the code book. It can either be, bales can either be load bearing on the left or non-load bearing on the right, with either post and beam or a Larson truss system. And I don't want to stop here and go into a program I use called Revit. So I'm working on, and this is where it gets a little technical. And if you're here, I hope you appreciate a little bit of technicality. So Larson trusses, it's a great way to reduce thermal bridging in structure. We're still waiting on the engineer to confirm whether this can be a 3-foot on center or somewhere between a 3-foot and a 6-foot on center double stud type wall system that will put the bales on edge. And that's great. Still a incredibly thick, oh, that's something else. It's this one that's the full bale on edge. creates a 14.5 wall cavity, and then 1.5 inches of plaster on each side. On the outside, in the Pacific Northwest, you need a good hat and a good boots. That means a good overhang, and that incorporates, the rays, that really calculates where the sun, anyway, passive solar, do it. It's the Pacific Northwest. It really takes advantage of the thermal gains from the sun and keeps the water off the walls. We need a big overhang in the Pacific Northwest if we're going to use natural materials, because wall systems need to be breathable. Again, vapor permeable, airtight wall systems that are highly insulative and incorporate thermal mass. I'm just going to keep repeating some of those terms because it needs to ingrain in our minds when we're thinking about whether this wall system is a good idea or not in this climate. Those are the criteria that we really need to be starting with, at least. We can't compromise on any of those. And there's others to incorporate, but I want to plug those as the critical ones. See what else about this. I want to start to open it up for questions as we go, because I want to talk more about the technicals, but I want to know, what are you curious about? What are you noticing that you want me to speak more to, et cetera, et cetera. I want to just kind of turn this into a conversation than anything. I want to know where to go from here.
And we just had someone ask in the chat, what about bamboo? Is it suited to this climate to grow, at least here in the Pacific Northwest? What are your thoughts on bamboo?
Yeah, I've heard conflicting things about bamboo. I've heard from the agricultural friends that I have, soil people, that it's not the best idea. Actually, partner Robbie, you're on this, right? Could you speak to bamboo a little bit? Do you have the sense?
Hi. Yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Robbie. I'm Aaron's right-hand person most of the time, and yeah, bamboo is a great resource for growing and building if you're in that climate, and if that's, in our opinion, if that's a naturally occurring plant. The reason that we don't promote it or want to proliferate it a lot is because it is actually quite invasive, and the root systems will take over, and it tends to choke out natural flora that we really are trying to save more of and preserve here, especially as so many different kinds of species have been introduced, and we're really trying to stay local. And in general, this was also brought up in the chat that I'd like to speak to. Some hemp is obviously a big buzzword these days, and Aaron mentioned a high biomass plant fiber that we work with, and really there's one that we prefer that we don't tend to share a lot of, but it's really any bast fiber, and a lot of them are grown in Southeast Asia, Africa, warmer climates, and given enough acreage and property, they could be grown quite well here if naturalized, and that's some of what we're doing. Hemp has a history, and so it's easy to grow, but it isn't quite as accessible as we like, and there are fibers that can produce more and tend to take less political and financial leveraging. So that's a lot of where we're coming from with the plant world. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm noticing that Brian has a hand up. Aaron, do you have time to take a question?
Oh yeah, of course. Brian, is your hand still up from before when I was asking who was here last time? Or do you have a question?
Sorry, that was just a remainder.
Cool, figured.
Get rid of it.
Thank you. I am also just noticing how beautifully populated the chat is, and I have not been paying attention to it.
That's okay. Ravi and I have been on there. We do have a question to hear more detail about SNPs and about how to make a 70s house more environmentally friendly. An energy audit is scheduled, looking for 3 recommendations. And also, Tom, I wasn't sure, you had your hand up there for a moment. Nina, I'm sorry for doing your job.
No, it's great.
Oh, hi, Nina. Hi, Aaron. Evergreen grad, by the way. Yeah, I was wondering about if you could elaborate on your comment about Faswall, on the carbon content of Faswall, because I know it uses Portland cement as a binder and you have cement, concrete filling it. But I think you said something about building a wall it creates a wall with less cement.
Yeah, and I'm torn. I've been torn about Faswall for a while. Their numbers are, they say 17% as a metric, as in, like, if you're comparing Faswall structures to similarly structured monolithic concrete walls, that system uses 17% of the required concrete to achieve that structure. However, you're right, there is still cement binder in the blocks themselves and rebar and concrete in the thin grid within the blocks. This is why I started there and moved into plant fibers, other ways to achieve the structure. I think ShelterWorks, they took a step in the right direction. I think it's a hell of a good step in the right direction, but you're right, it needs to be better. And I wanted to bring that up, just a little transparency. I wanted to bring that system up as inspiration for what's possible and get some creative juices going around other forms of natural block material that can really sequester carbon without using concrete. That would be an ideal thing. And I don't know of anything so far that's blocked, that's not bale.
Yeah, I think there's a hemp block from Justified Biofiber that I haven't seen really actually sold here yet. But I guess my question revolves around, a lot of designs, you eventually have a below grade or partly below grade, or you built partly into a hill, and you really can't use straw bale or hemp or any natural fiber in those situations. So Faswall is probably a good solution, but I just don't know if it's the best carbon, sequestering idea.
Indeed, I agree. And yeah, the below grade thing is tricky.
I'm really curious if you come up with, what you guys find about, partially or sheltered or partly below grade walls.
Yeah, and I know, again, just for clarity for everyone else, straw bale, and I'm familiar with that block. I forgot about. Thanks for reminding me about that block, the hemp block with like the biocomposite Lego structure within it. Does that? I know straw bale itself needs to be vapor permeable. It has to achieve a certain level of vapor permeability. Do you know if that block if hemp and lime together, or plant fiber and lime, because that's what hempcrete is, if that requires, to my understanding, those materials also require a certain level of vapor permeability. So I'm wondering if anyone can speak to that and confirm or deny that.
What the perm rating on it is. I would imagine it's pretty high.
Mm-hmm. But again, because being able to berm it is tricky. You need to berm it, you need to have it be, you need to seal the hell out of the outside. So that cuts out straw bale, at least, as you said. So finding a good carbon sequestering solution for that is a big priority for me, at least.
Two quick things. Sorry, I'm listening in, but I'm also on solo parenting duty with 2 young children running around. So
understandable. Thanks for being here.
Spare you guys that background noise. In the beam tool, the fast block approach is actually looking pretty darn favorable. Probably along that same reduction per cubic foot or, cubic meter in that tool. 70–80% or something like that, because a lot of the volume is a carbon storing material that offsets some of the carbon impact of the cementitious materials in there, right? So I haven't actually explored the LCA they've done in detail, so that's something I should definitely look into. I'll put that on my to-do list. Yeah, and as far as the vapor permeability, typically my understanding is it's got to stay above 10 as a whole assembly. Keeping it at that degree of vapor permeability with that degree of thickness is often challenging. There's a big difference between perms and permeants. One is a rating at a given thickness. One is a rating of a whole assembly, right? That the permeability, the amount per thickness of material applied to the whole assembly can really bring down the number. So you might have a material that sounds like it's, say, 44 perms, but do 12 inches of that material, that number is probably closer to 4 to 10. So you do have to be considered vapor open. Generally 10 is kind of the rule of thumb number. But can straw bale walls with plaster and all the other stuff get to 10 fully as an assembly? Right? It's there's a lot of science out there, but there's not necessarily super clear answers on the best practice there. But the rule of thumb is absolutely, it needs to be both as airtight as possible and as vapor open as possible. Yeah.
And again, Appendix S has good detail about the required perm ratings for and the different plaster options that you can put on each side of the straw bale, for example, to achieve the perm ratings, including the moisture content of the bales before you close them up. That's all in the code.
That's a really good point. And especially with the perm rating of the finishes is going to be mission critical, because if you do a loam perm finish around straw bale, you're now trapping moisture inside a straw bale wall, and that's not a good situation.
Yeah.
You want, if you think about it as a water vapor standpoint, you want it to be easier for water vapor to go out than stay in, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, and from my memory, when I read the details of that in Appendix S, a cement to lime ratio of 1 to 6 was the limit. Any more cement is not vapor permeable enough. So earth, just raw clay and sand is the highest permeability. I mean, you're absorbing moisture out of that straw at that point and freely releasing it. Lime is still very vapor permeable, but less so than clay. And then cement is not vapor permeable enough.
And you bring up with clay, I can't out myself now because we're getting into stuff I'm probably going to dive too deep on. But with clay, it has a wicking property too, right? So when liquid water does build up due to condensation, the clay can then wick that water, the liquid water, the water in the liquid state readily out, as well as be able to move water in the vapor state out. So you got two things working for you: bulk water movement as well as water vapor movement through convection or whatever.
Yeah, which is huge. And on top of that, the antimicrobial properties of the clay are going to inhibit mold and other growths from happening. So even if it can't keep up with some leak or something heavy that water infiltration, it's going to do a damn good job at keeping mold away for a while.
So in our more conventionally framed wall assemblies we're doing down here in Phoenix right now, we're putting wool into the wall, like actual, wool, Havelock wool, to have similar benefits, right? Moisture regulation is a large part of what we're going for. In Phoenix, obviously, being very dry indoors is a huge problem. I'm speaking from Tucson right now and blinking often because it's probably 20% relative humidity inside my house right now. It's very dry. But a really cool feature of natural materials is that they can take moisture from the air into them, adsorb, which means hold on the surface of the material, the water vapor, and then let that water vapor get back into the space when it gets too dry. So our hypothesis down here for the Southwest is that we can help increase the average humidity in our buildings so that they're much more comfortable spaces. Interestingly enough, the same materials in the Northwest will help decrease the average humidity indoors. They help keep it at that right magical, you know, say 45 to 55%. They can really help push towards that from either direction. It's I'd call it miraculous, but it's science. So
it's really cool. And the language I use to sell that concept is clay buffers. It depends on what I'm talking about. Either buffers the moisture content in the air, or it manages the moisture. Both are true. But yeah, it stabilizes and keeps it more consistent. So yeah, it's absorbing when it's high humidity, and it's releasing when it's low humidity.
I settled on modulate over time for some reason.
Modulate. Yeah, that's nice.
Not sure why.
From experience too, Aaron, as an architect, I worked on the Lopez Community Land Trust net zero up north of the village there, and we did straw bale with earthen plaster, which breathes really freely. We were able to get it approved engineering wise. That was difficult in our high seismic zones, but you know, the straw bales will modulate the moisture. The problem is they also, if it gets beyond, I think it was 35% saturation, it begins to grow and mold and things like that because they like to eat it. And the problem though was more the discovery of the solution. We had originally budgeted for heat recovery ventilation for control of air in and out of the homes. And it got budgeted out. And later the land trust came back and put it back in because that was ultimately the solution to the problem. And they were building very affordably. So, you know, it just turned out in the northeast corners of almost all the houses in our climate, we did have some pretty good overhangs, but maybe not enough to keep enough of the water off from rain. But more of the problem was the indoor moisture migrating into the walls, staying there and only being able to dry out certain months of the year. So, and it was done very scientifically by some of you here know Scott Finley, but he put moisture sensors in the walls, figured it out, and then we ended up putting back in the heat recovery ventilation, partly because they also left out the through wall ports that we had designed in at Methuen. So maybe if we had had that control, some of that moisture migration could have been prevented, but you really got to be careful with the physics. Like Lucas is saying, you don't want the science experiment within the wall. So we learn from our mistakes. Yeah.
Huge. I always will suggest an HRV or an ERV, the heat ventilation recovery unit. So important to get that moisture out of the indoor space, bring in fresh air, condition it naturally, you know, through the heat recovery, the heat exchanger, and that does a huge deal to dry out the space, just remove the moisture. I mean, humans was the 7 liters. Humans are emitting 7 liters of moisture a day.
Yeah. And those were mostly a passive solar design as well. So we had some drying, but during certain times of the year, it just didn't do enough. And earthen plaster is highly vapor permeable. So, you know, the land trust didn't want to have the cement. And so it was more old style earthen plaster. And we were able to get a straw bale expert do the structural analysis that got us the approval through Island County up there.
Yeah, I love those structures. I've looked at them as case studies in my early learning journeys. And thank you, Brian, for making that happen. You're any part of that.
Aaron, I have a quick question for you about just with the context of, we're talking a lot about exterior walls, which our next project upcoming in Tucson, we're going to take a page out of your playbook, hopefully, and do, you know, rammed earth straw bale exterior walls, some rammed earth walls for separation between spaces. But we'll still have some wood framed interior walls as we do on our other projects right now. We're putting Havelock wool in those for the same moisture buffering, indoor air quality reasons. Do you have other things you've used for interior walls as far as natural materials? That's the only one we've really settled on and found that we're super happy with is the interior wall material.
Yeah, you know,
I'm
this
very
is a
interested
tricky
in the
one.
hemp, but I need to give Tommy a call because I haven't talked to him in detail about that yet either. So not
Yeah.
to say anything bad about the hemp bats, I just don't know enough about them yet.
You know, I think this really comes down to a budget question. At least in my experience, when we get to the interior walls, there's nothing, you know, I mean, there are natural ways like, okay, if budget's tight, we're going wood frame, plasterboard, and one coat of clay plaster right over that. We're fiberglass mesh taping the seams and putting clay all over that wall. And it's our special blend that will stick to drywall raw. Fully natural. You can, it's all edible ingredients. If they want to, you know, if they want to put more artistic touch, cob is a great one. I mean, just straight thermal mass, opportunities to store high biomass plant fibers, go for it. You know, like light straw clay, it's a good one because it has a lot of thermal mass in that. It's just a lot more clay and its structure. I mean, we've done that in some basement remodels that had a lot of moisture coming through the walls. We did light straw clay and a thick earthen plaster, and set up some moisture meters, and it handled really well.
Huh. And wait, are you saying that's load bearing on its own without additional framing?
No, not well, no, we just had we did a pretty it depends. I mean, you do standard 24 on center with some like spacer Lego things in between, little furring strips in the center of the studs.
I see.
And then just plywood forms on each side and stuff it kind of like rammed earth.
Very cool. What thickness of wall does that end up being?
3.5, just
Really?
standard 2x4 walls.
Really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then we just plastered straight to that.
Wow.
So yeah, you could get away with no drywall in interior. Yeah, if you had a little bit of an extra labor budget for it.
I have an absolutely amazing client who's basically building his own backyard cottage with our guidance in Phoenix because, I don't know, they're just incredible people dedicated to sustainable life, all that stuff. But he wants to avoid drywall entirely. I think I could probably get him to do this. I need to call you. Anyway, I should let others ask questions, but I'm going to call you about this.
In the meantime, I'll try to find the picture of that interior wall. Yeah, we'll talk later about that.
And Nina,
Robbie,
have you noticed any questions in the chat we may have missed? It's probably a moment where you should check in on that.
I'd love to thank Melissa, and I apologize. Robbie, is it Robbie? Thank you so much. Thank you so much for answering and providing all that awesome information in the chat. Greatly appreciate you all. Some great discussions. The chat is saved at the end. So if you all are interested in getting these links and information shared with you, let me know. I'd be more than happy to send you an email with that info. And you all will be getting an email from me via Eventbrite or directly with my email address. So if you would like a copy of the chat, let me know. I'd be happy to provide that for you.
Lucas, I want to just show you real quick.
Please do.
And everyone else that's interested in
oh
this.
My God.
This was a basement remodel we did a few years ago. And it was a mess because straw and clay everywhere, but cleans up easy, don't worry. But we put these furring strips.
Kind of mess, though. I mean, that's not.
Yeah.
That's not gross. Oh no, there's some nature on my floor.
Yeah. And then we put like a slip coat. We sprayed some clay to embed in, and then we rolled out burlap mesh and stapled it to the studs, and then applied about a 1/2 inch thick of earthen plaster over that. And so the mesh on each side created a structural component that we were like banging it pretty hard when it was all done, and it was solid. And so it was really experimental, and but it worked great.
Dude, I love this.
And we had a little work party, and we stuffed all this straw in like 5 hours. It happened so quick.
Oh my God, I'm loving this so much. I think we're really gonna have to try this at this guy's house. There's a laundry separation and bathroom separation wall. This could be very nice for. Wow, I'm blown away by that. I've never seen that before. That's very cool. That's very cool. And I was gonna say, in general, I want to second what Nina said there. I wish our chat was always this well answered and addressed. We often are kind of having to save it to the end and then circling back to questions. So thank you guys. That's amazing for doing this. I've learned a ton reading through it as we go too. It's been awesome. And Nina, you said that chat is going to be automatically sent out to everyone or upon request?
Upon request. Eventbrite doesn't allow you to send attachments. So if you do want the Eventbrite, I'm going to put my email in the chat one last time for y'all to take down, and please reach out to me directly. Also, I'll be emailing you via Eventbrite, and I'll put my direct email in that as well. So yeah, please feel free to request that. I'll let this discussion go for a bit longer. These education events are very kind of casual, and the time we end. If you do have to get going, please, feel free to do so and check out our next upcoming events. The recording will be saving this great lively discussion, so you can always tune in after. But yeah, thanks again to our speakers, and I'll leave the event going for a bit longer. This is fantastic. Aaron, that project looks so cool. Did not know you could do that with clay and some straw bale. That's pretty outstanding. What was the fire rating on that? That's what I worry about. Is there any added fire protection or any sort of?
Oh yeah, and I know I'm going to reference CASBA's work. It's California Straw Bales Association. They did a full-on fire rating test of the straw bale wall system. And because you have a solid 1 inch to 1.5 inches of earth and plaster, and they built, they did the official fire test, and it passed with flying colors. And then they're working with local governments and advocating for, hey, this is a great fire, climate solution for like fire mitigation. Rebuild your cities with, consider this wall system when you rebuild your towns after the fire. Because I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but my takeaway from reading it was fantastic. That's the answer to that. Excellent.
Does anybody remember Chris Stafford? Some of us older people remember Chris Stafford, one of the guild founders, who was a straw bale architect. And he gave a talk once about how he'd gotten a phone call from Saudi Arabia. And they flew him over there to design and help build a straw bale public building, like a library with straw bales, and put him up and treated him real nice. And, it was just a great opportunity for him. And normally everybody thought straw bales don't really burn, but that over there, when the moisture content was like below 5%, there was an incident with a plumber's torch after it was built, and the whole bale building just burned down. Wow. But he said that would not happen anywhere except for the Saudi Arabian, except for a really dry desert.
Yeah, that's crazy, because
normally it's very fire resistant.
Yeah, I mean, even in Tucson, the moisture content stays pretty high. The guy who I'm working with, this guy named Ray Clemens, who owns a company, Natural Building Works, he, we've been looking at this kind of stuff, moisture content in the straw bale walls that we're doing here. And I mean, this is a higher desert and definitely higher moisture content, but wow, I did not know you could get them dry enough to make them flammable, because in general,
Chris did in Saudi Arabia.
Well, what must have happened too is normally the density of the bales are so tightly packed, there's no air cavity for fire to move through it, right? But when it dried, I guess it also pulled back, so there's room for air to move through.
Yeah,
that's crazy though. But then it still had to, this was before finish then, right? Because
it was all dry stacked up, and it just, the whole thing burnt.
Yeah, because
Chris was
otherwise,
a really marvelous Guild member for a long, long time. I think he passed away in about 2005 or something, but Lucas, I was wondering if for straw bale in the desert, do you have to truck that a long distance? Where do you get straw?
there's a lot of it available around here.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's been part of the, desert building ecosystem, if you will, for 100+ years. In a lot actually, it's kind of funny you bring that during pandemic when material supply was it's still not great obviously now, but when it was really bad, a couple straw bale projects happened because it was what we could get to build wall systems with. Right, that's how readily available it is here. But that's a very lucky thing. That's Tucson, that's not Phoenix for sure.
I got a question from Robbie. I just wanted to, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I have for a minute. Thank you. I actually wanted to try to redirect some of the conversation. This is an awesome conversation about materials. And there were a couple things that I feel like want to get said about the original topic of the event, which is building and selling. And it was a bit more relevant when I thought of it and raised my hand. So this might seem like a non sequitur, but one of the things that we have spoken about recently to a couple of clients that feels relevant, and this is probably a no-brainer to some of the more seasoned builders here, but there's a lot of conversation about, or we get asked a lot, can you build a completely natural building with no conventional materials? And there's sort of these pipe dreams out there that you can just build, like stack some mud and sticks and stones together and it's fine. There's geniuses out here who can do this. And we like to give disclaimers that we cannot actually do that, and that there's still a level of conventional building. I think Lucas mentioned there's a few minutes ago that we still have to use stick framing or conventional lumber, and technically that's a natural material, though we mostly know that it's not as sustainable as others. Straw is great because it's a byproduct, but also it's proving to be flammable in some cases, and hopefully the US and other areas people might be from here won't reach a normal temperature such as Saudi Arabia, but we don't really know because the climate's a bit derailed. So proactively, we want to try to use building materials that have a ridiculously high R value. The other thing that I hoped would get spoken to tonight, which also might seem a bit peripheral, but feels like it's too good of an opportunity not to say to this room. I was encouraging Aaron to discuss this topic, and that is political discussion around building. And this loops back into sales because what happens in the political sphere really informs a lot of our culture, what our policy is shaped around, and what we understand as law around building, what the conversation, it informs the conversation. And Aaron is also, I don't know if this was mentioned, on the Planning Commission here in Olympia, and has been for 3 years. Lot of deep dive, nitty gritty conversations happening in our office that I've tuned into kind of inadvertently, happening around building and what does it look like to have a green building. And I hear this being brought up a lot, and it almost always includes the conversation about building performance once it's built. But Aaron, do you want to do this? Actually, I'm jumping the gun. Would you like to speak to this? You're probably a lot better at it than me.
What we've been talking about, especially the last month's educational event about the difference between the costs of the operational cost of carbon, or the operational carbon cost of buildings versus the upfront embodied carbon in the materials itself, like what it costs to get it built and then what it costs to run it for its life cycle. And what I hear you speaking to is in the political climate, often it's like in the climate action plans, et cetera, et cetera. When I see these graphs presented to us and the numbers around carbon in our jurisdiction, I always ask, are these numbers including, when you say our built-in, our buildings are accounting for this percentage of carbon in our community, is that accounting, or is that including the carbon or the embodied carbon in the materials? And it's always no. It's always, and that's a big, I said most recently, I said, well, until we start including that, this seems kind of pointless to me, because that's the majority of that number you're talking about. Actually, that the buildings would take up a much bigger section of the pie graph if you did actually include the whole story, and that would inform the political conversation much differently if we were actually talking about the full story. I think, is that what you're speaking to?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, we see it all the time in that graph where, 40% is industrial impact, right? 30% is the built environment, 30% is agriculture and whatever, and then 40% is industry. Industry is basically making the building materials that then have that other 30% impact. That's what industry more or less is, right? So you are absolutely correct about that, at least in my very biased perspective.
And Lucas, you did such a fantastic job presenting that data last month. Hey, please, everyone, please go find that recording and watch last month's educational series event. It was fantastic. And it's important. And then share it.
I'm gonna want to just jump in for a second, you guys. I just wanted to mention a couple other things about the selling points of things. I wrote down care and repair. One of the things about that is that, people are interested in doing things, but I think possibly with people being a little bit more connected as citizens, paying attention to what's going on in the world, paying attention to what they're living in and how they're living. I saw George was putting things in about what people put into their homes that, cause problems and fires and different things. But I think the issue of when you build a sustainable house, that there needs to be a lot of information about how do you care for this, investing in that, and how do you repair it? I'm looking at repair cafes, different things like that for other things, but I don't think enough attention is paid to that, and the idea of waste management, that we still have a throwaway society, and just being engaged in where you're living. And I don't think that's used as a selling point of having it. It's basically like being in a living building. So I really think that, spending a little bit more time presenting those sorts of things, the cradle to cradle, all those sorts of issues that people are, I think, wanting to do more because things are becoming way more expensive. They're going to have to be holding on to what they have and using what they have, and then understanding the value. So I just wanted to put that out there, and I didn't know with selling points and things like that, how much is invested when we're talking about this building. Do you tell people when you're in here, these are the companies that will assist you if you need repairs, this is where you go. I think, I've seen it where people have built houses, and I go into a green built house and they might have a binder or some information there. It's like, okay, here's your manual. But I don't know if there's an ongoing education around that and a learning experience for people who invest in houses like this. And the fact that if you're trying to build affordable housing, which I work a lot with in sustainability, is that, introducing it in a way that's easy for everyone to participate, and not just that people can afford. We're trying to bring the prices down, but there are ways, like you've been talking about, that make it more affordable. So I think those sorts of things would be really good to connect with.
That's so amazing. Yeah, I mean, honestly, how is it not part of high performance to have composting built in easily into your house, right? There we go, right? Like, I have never seen a passive house that's been sold on like having compost as part of the countertop or so. And the compost is just as air sealed as your passive house, right? So you don't smell it. Boom, sold.
Yeah, so
thank you for bringing all that up. That's what I'm trying to say. That's really important.
to extend on both those points, Aaron and Linda's, sustainability includes durability. So you have that initial carbon cost, and then you have the cost over the lifetime. And then you take all of that together and put it over the whole thing. Well, the longer the thing's going to last, be usable, whether it can be repaired or whether it just is that durable, which is part of the word quality, right? These things they're gonna last, and so you can amortize that initial carbon cost over that time period because it's costing that once, right? So when we talk about high performance, part of high performance is it's going to last. It's going to become like a classic car. It's going to be it's built really well. And then, of course, when you have to tear it down, it's not full of foam and other things you can't reuse, meaning that you need more carbon cost to build the next thing. So that, that's something I bring up about when I talk about my product.
You just
40 years.
You just made
Depends on how wealthy the people are in the neighborhood. It doesn't last as long with my experience. It doesn't last as long with the wealthy people because they change their style and somebody else buys the house and rips it down.
Well, that's fair.
Yeah,
that needs to stop
because they want they want an Italianate house instead of a craftsman house.
Or we build wall systems, so you have to tear them down to redo your plumbing and electrical instead of putting in a service cavity, so you can just do that later and leave the rest of the. If we look at our walls as finish hanging systems that take care of everything else other than the aesthetic, then we can change finishes over time to match aesthetic needs and stuff like that, right? There's a lot we can do in design to increase durability. Gio, you made me think of a new metric I want to propose, I guess as of tonight, officially here, which is the total life cycle carbon impact per square foot per year of expected life. Right? That I think is a really complete way to look at carbon impact over time, because that matters immensely. And with that, I'm going to go off camera a second. My kids are coming.
Thank you, everyone. We need to go too. It's been really good. I'm going to get in touch.
I wanted to thank Aaron and Robbie and Melissa, all of you and Aaron, especially for what you just said is kind of a mind-blowing thing about being on the planning commission and asking for a different type of study. A lot of the latter part of my career has been about, energy use of buildings, making buildings more energy efficient. And we've had utilities, we have Energy Star, we have Washington State Energy Code, we have all this powerful institutions trying to get buildings more efficient. And you made me imagine a second future where the same thing has to happen with materials, that you've got, I don't know, incentives for not using hardy panel or whatever, but I mean, getting these ideas out to the mass market was, something that we started working on with energy efficiency, 25, 30 years ago. And, getting it from the niche market out to the mass market. And the mass market's really a long way from it right now, but.
So I'm here for. Thank you so much for wow, I feel honored with that acknowledgement.
An old evergreener to a young one.
I want to thank all the elders
Apparently young
in this room.
Yeah.
This is awesome. A cool intergenerational melange of people that, speaking confidently for Aaron, Melissa, and other probably, what was his name? Arizona guy. Other young people here, younger people bringing it up. Thank you so much for all the work that you've done.
Speak up a little. I
Sorry,
can-
thank you so much for, is this working? Is this better? I don't actually know if my headphones are still on.
I think he just really wanted to hear you say that.
What is-
So just-
Oh, I see what you did there.
We celebrate you. We appreciate you. We wouldn't be in a position to carry this work forward without you.
Thanks for
Thanks,
finishing that
Bob.
for me.
The big theme of the Northwest EcoBuilding Guild this year is kind of workforce development and developing and passing along this information as always, as we always do. But I'd like to thank our speakers as well as folks part of each of the organizations. Fantastic chat and awesome information being shared. Yeah, call your legislators, as was mentioned in the chat, make moves, join code councils, or at least, join comment periods on those code councils to make a difference. And keep the great work up. Erin, Melissa, Robbie, Lucas, and Jay Gentry, thank you all so much for your insight. Greatly appreciated. Before I, wrap up everything today, I'd like to just quick shout out and thanks to our sponsors one more time, which is Earth Homes, Aaron Sauerhoff's awesome company, and Pathway Design and Construction, as well as Mighty Energy Solutions. Geo, thank you for your input tonight. Geo's with Mighty Energy Solutions as well. I'll leave the event going until 9 o'clock for any kind of last minute networking and discussions, but amazing, really, really inspired tonight. And we look forward to seeing you all at our next events. We have a really busy year with everything from touching on addressing homelessness through sustainable design and building, through multifamily housing affordability, to next month, which is just a Washington State Energy Code training question and answer session. So we're really excited. Oh, and go on the Northwest Green Home Tour. Erin, I might be reaching out to you to put an awesome project on the tour here soon, because it looks like you've got some great ones to show off. So,
Abby, is our application in yet?
Soon.
And that's okay.
Soon.
You still have time.
I'll just mention that I know for sure that these people are doing like 18-hour days every day. So we'll get there.
Yeah. It will be, don't worry.
Oh, great. Well, thanks all.
And thank you, Nina, so much for organizing so much work on the back end to put these together. And such an asset to this bioregion. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. This has been a conversation of beautiful people. Thanks for being part of this.
Thanks for having me. I did put my contact information in the chat. So if you get the chat, you'll get that.
Yes.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you all. You're wonderful. It's just been inspiring and just lovely to hear from all you people. Yeah, thank you.
Stay safe.
I'll be sticking around at least for another 10 minutes or so if anyone wants to chat.
Sounds great, Erin. I'll keep it going.
Yeah. Cool.
Thank you so much. That was really awesome. Golly, we need to put straw bale on our built green checklist.
So, hey, do you guys, does anyone know if anybody has tried some of the hempcrete Lego blocks from Just Biofiber in Canada?
I've held one in 2016 or 17. I was really inspired by it, but I've never actually put two of them together.
Yeah, I mean, it's the type of thing where initially they'll have a hard time building a factory big enough to make the market in Alberta probably, or they'll probably, it's like French wine, most of it they don't send to us, they just drink it. So
Do you know if they use type
But it
S
looks really
or-
exciting.
Do you know what kind of lime they're using? Or is the person from Hemp Texture still here? Tommy, are you still here? Available? I'd love to ask what kind of lime you guys prefer to use. If you know and can speak to that. And where, I mean, the best NHL that I know of is from Portugal. And you know, there are some limes that are manufactured here, but well, I guess you wouldn't want to use NHL in a thick situation like that.
So lime plaster and clay, are these commercial products that you can buy, or how do you source this stuff?
Yeah, unfortunately, not really. There's so we're working on a line. We'll be coming out with a product line as soon as possible. We want to really or a lot more work to do to dial it in. But lime, yeah, there is a sweet lime plaster or company. The founder is an incredible person. His name is Ryan Shivers of Limestrong. He uses pumice as his aggregate. It's fantastic. He's out of Idaho, Utah, and I've done I've helped him facilitate workshops for different lime plaster systems. And he has a great system. He just came out with a new line called Limestrong Build, and it's meant to be like a thicker build coat going over Fazwall and straw bale. But he's got a great blend that you can buy bags, great color system, the whole thing. On the clay side, it's expensive. It's really expensive, but they're out of New Mexico. They're called American Clay. And they're good. And I'm not saying this because it's my stuff and I've designed it, but I think our blend is way better.
So you just made your own from clay you can get locally?
Yeah, it's a blend of clays that are sourced through pottery, like a pottery clay, or a blend of pottery clays that work really well together and in this kind of application. And then a blend of different aggregates that work really well. And then some other natural binder type things. And the trick with the clay plaster is to achieve something that can go on thick enough to be a one coat without cracking, and without needing fiber, which is really hard. That isn't dusty when you go to rub it when it dries, and still that doesn't compromise breathability, durability, and workability, and rehydratability. So that's a word, but being able to still rehydrate it is something that I'm really excited to like. There, the higher end of American Clay, their line, they use, I forget the compound, but you can't rehydrate it as well. It doesn't actually rehydrate very well. So being a repairable plaster isn't that doable with their stuff. Or ours, you just spray it down, let it soak in for a few minutes, smear it in, and just buff it in, and then it becomes just another blob on the wall.
Great.
Yeah.
So you might be putting that on the market at some point. Sounds like.
Indeed. And if you want it now, we're happy to mix up buckets. I'm super confident in it to just mix it up in buckets in a dry powder, and I'll hand deliver it. I want people to. I'm looking for people to play with it, experiment with it, put it to the test, give us some feedback.
Do you do clay floors too?
We do, yeah. Yeah, we have a special blend that was really risky, but we didn't have time to wait for our samples to really perform. Then we put it over this 1,500 square foot house. And it was great. We applied the whole floor in like 4 hours. and it behaves like a self-leveler. It's really kind of trippy. And then, yeah, you could walk on it the next day. It's really, really strange. It worked great. And it's
Cool. I might
been
call
about
you
a month.
up.
Yeah. Cool.
I have a shop floor
probably,
to do, which might be a good experiment for me.
Shop floors I'm scared to do a shop floor because of the extra beating that they could take.
Yeah. Well, it's like a storeroom. It's a very light use. So
There's also, and I hear, Robbie, I'm reading your mind. You're gonna talk about decoupage?
It's also in the chat, but yeah, let's go with that.
I'm not looking at
Deco what?
Decoupage.
Not decoupage, not the preschool glue.
No, decoupage.
Decoupage, yeah.
They use recycled cement, schmutz stuff. I don't know.
It's a combination of recycled cement and glass and soy.
Yeah, soy-based binder polymer. It's soy-based polymer, but that's what we use for showers, countertops, floors, like entryway landing pads, where it's heavy beating. Yeah, great stuff. And that's like we have some friends who were playing around with it in their tiny house. They were building for a client, and they sprayed it on 1/8" plywood. And it's a cement plaster, right? They sprayed it on 1/8" plywood on the ground, and then one person putting it up on the ceiling and having it flop all over the place. They screwed it up and put furring strips on the seams, and there was no cracking as it was flexing. It was the most bizarre. I still don't understand how
it's flexible somehow.
It's that flexible without crack. It blows my mind. But the whole floor, I didn't talk about the floor system at this house in Centralia, but there's no concrete, there's no cement, there's no lime. It's a fully, it's a foot thick of gravel and clay that we just compressed and jiggled as it was drying. And it took a while to dry, but and we strategically inset fiberglass mesh netting at the 2 inches up from the bottom and one at the top to create a structural earthen slab floating on top of 3 inches of foam. And the whole slab there's no cracks at all. It's like still soft. You can jump and feel the vibrations and feel it. It's not as hard as concrete, so it's softer on the knees and ankles, but it's incredibly durable. So we did that, and that's also really experimental. I don't know anyone who's done a wet, soupy gravel clay mix like that and called it a floor slab.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, but I want to start putting those things through cement. One of the things I'm leaning into the future is industrializing natural building. So what's our current infrastructure? Okay, we have a ton of cement trucks. We have mortar pumps, concrete pumps. Let's start using those things instead of mixing it in a mortar mixer and wheelbarrowing it in. Let's just bring in a few truckloads and pour it and use the existing skill labor. People know how to apply a concrete floor. It's the same process. And little tweaks.
I always remember that with some of the early cob buildings. It'd be a party and people were stomping with their feet to mix cob with straw. And I kept thinking, I want to see a guy pull up with a mixer truck and spray that stuff out of there.
Yeah.
10 minutes.
We have a colleague that we work with that has bought a mortar pump, and he's putting clay plaster and lime plaster in this pump in a big hopper